Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Gridiron Grind with Andrew and Lance. This week, we're going to catch up on some more free agency news. Not a lot has happened, but there are some juicy tidbits we can still get into. And we're going to start here with some quarterback talk. So should we start with as you call it, the elephant in the room with Rodgers, or should we go with some more relevant quarterbacks that are actually going to make a difference this year? What do you think?
I think you got to start with the elephant in the room, Andrew, because I think
Okay.
everyone's dying to understand
hmm
how is the Vikings fan feeling about all of this.
Oh, we are so sad. So sad that we don't get to have Aaron Rodgers and that headache in our locker room. No, of course we're thrilled. This was the decision for months. So what happened was Rodgers was available, and like every front office, what they have to do is they have to take every scenario into account. So they had a conversation. Hey, what about Aaron Rodgers? Oh yeah. Is he still playing? Yeah, he is. Moving on. That's pretty much how it happened. They never seriously considered it. They talked about it for maybe a day, probably less, because Aaron Rodgers was calling, hey, I can come over. I can play for you guys. Can be like a Brett Favre. No, no, we're good. We love our kid. We love our young kid who I mentioned to you the other day. What JJ is doing is not only is he in, all the off season, all the during regular season meetings. He hurt his meniscus, yes, but he was still in all these meetings, digging into the playbook on the VR system, looking through the lens of the practice in his own eyes. Not only is he doing all that, but what I loved what he is doing is he's in the defensive meetings too, talking with Brian Flores, getting in his head, trying to learn defenses as much as he can at the same time as the offense. He's asking Flo questions. He's trying to understand his scheme, trying to find the weaknesses in his scheme. And if you can find the weaknesses and a crazy scientist scheme as a rookie, that's showing leadership right there. So I just love every offseason thing, every little nugget I can get about this kid. I'm super excited and I'm happy that we no longer have to worry about Aaron Rodgers. He can go to the Steelers, who he went visited for 6 hours, wasted 6 hours of their day without even signing a contract. Just talked to them for 6 hours. I was like, all right, bye. See ya. He can either sign with the Steelers or retire. Doesn't matter to me anymore. I don't got to worry about that guy anymore. I'm happy. Minnesota Vikings are happy. We got our franchise quarterback. We're looking forward to seeing what he can do.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I just keep thinking about, Andrew, that's funny to me is that you make it sound like you were in the room deciding with ownership and with KOC what the direction
hmm
was for the football team.
hmm
I don't disagree with your end result, but it is a little humorous to hear this
hmm
uh confidence that, hey, I know the exact conversation that took place in the front office for Minnesota. Um,
hmm
but maybe after that New York Giants special, watching Joe Shane just absolutely destroy that franchise, maybe we should be a little more confident about how much we do know that's taking place in these
That's fair.
front offices.
That's
I mean,
fair.
that is the worst front office in the NFL. So maybe I'm doing a disservice to the other people. That probably be something that'd be brought up.
That'd be a good new Netflix show. Front office of the NFL, like GMs instead of quarterback season two, which that'll be fine, but we need GM season one. We need to see some dumpster fires and see some GMs that actually know what they're doing.
I
That'd be
mean,
fun
I
to
agree with
watch.
you. That would be great. Maybe it's just me, by the way, on a side tangent, but I was pretty disappointed that they're not doing a mascot special. Um,
They had me for a second. I'm not gonna lie. They had me for a second. I was like, oh, interesting. I'd be down for this.
yeah, that was not what I was thinking was going to be the case.
hmm
Yeah, I mean, we could get into those thoughts later. I mean, to probably touch on the
Right.
Netflix thing, but we're on
hmm
quarterbacks right now, but actually,
Yes.
like,
Which,
looking
ironically, that's the
forward
Netflix
quarterbacks.
special.
But yeah, I totally agree
Yeah.
with you. The one thing I was thinking about as you brought up your point about the Vikings was, I mean, their quarterback situation when Brett Favre came in was a dumpster fire. I
Oh,
mean,
it was awful.
it was horrible. I'm
hmm
trying to think of it was Joe, who's the one that started against the Eagles? He he costed us the first or second seed. It was like a couple of years after, but I think Joe Webb, I think
Joe
that's his
Webb.
name.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I just that's my like when I think of like not really great quarterbacks. That's what I think of in that era for the Vikings is
Yep.
Joe
And
Webb.
Tavares Jackson,
Oh
and
yes,
there was
yes,
another guy they had, like Brooks Bollinger, I think, something like that.
yeah.
There's
Well, even like
uh,
there's Christian Ponder that you guys went through. Um,
the
I,
Ponder era.
there's just a lot of these quarterbacks that just there was nothing to feel hopeful for. Um,
Hmm.
so when Brett came knocking, it's like, well, wouldn't we sign him? Why wouldn't we make this move? And then
And
now you have,
actually, it was a little different how that happened. Like I listened to a bunch of insiders and Viking stuff, and how really happened was they went to training camp and they saw Tavares Jackson and other guys could not hit the broadside of a barn. They were dirt and balls in front of wide open receivers. So the Vikings called Brett and said, "Hey, do you want to come play for us?" And Brett said, "Yeah," because he was retired at the time. And they convinced him to unretire and had that magical '09 season that ended with Brett Favre doing what Brett Favre does, forcing it, trying to test his arm, throwing a pick in the game where he got beat down because it was the Bounty Gate, but that's a different story. But yeah, we called Brett, which was interesting because we knew we had this team that was loaded, ready to go, which needed a quarterback. This year, we have this team that's loaded, ready to go, but we have a quarterback that everyone keeps sleeping on. They keep saying they're really going to trust this guy who's never played an NFL snap. They'd rather have that than having a future Hall of Famer. 100 billion% yes. If this was Aaron Rodgers of 6 years ago, different story. It's Aaron Rodgers of now. I'm rolling with an unknown billion times over, running with the known dumpster fire of Aaron Rodgers.
well, I mean, this kind of goes back to the Cooper Cup situation, but it matters. You
Mm,
can't make your valuations off of what was, it's what is.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. Oh, and speaking of that, very, very short side tangent. Um, I saw today a video of Colin Cowherd ranking who's going to make the playoffs this year, and he says he's got to have guys coming, leaving, and then going in. There's always a change. He had the Seahawks making the playoffs, and the Vikings missing it, and the Bears making the playoffs, and the Vikings being last place, having the worst roster in the NFC North. I thought, really? Do you know what you're looking at? First of all, the Seahawks are not making the playoffs as constructed currently.
agreed.
They
Yeah.
have two slot receivers who are both talented, but they're both slot receivers. They have a quarterback who can get the ball to his guys if he has time and is protected, but they don't have an offensive line at all. So what's going to happen when Sam Darnold gets pressure in his face? He's going to get sacked 9 times like he did against the Lions and against the Rams. So unless they address that and they get a stud outside receiver, they are not making the playoffs. I'm sorry. They're going to probably win like 8 games, if that. Side
Yeah.
tangent
I mean,
over.
I think that they'll be competent, but
Hmm.
so, let's shift gears because I feel like that this actually ties in with what you're talking about. Seahawks went
Okay.
aggressively, went out for someone with Sam
Hmm.
Darnold that they felt like they could build a franchise around. I think they're short sighted. I don't think they're looking at the full spectrum of everything. They shelled out way too much money.
Hmm.
But then on the other hand, you have a team that's been struggling with making good financial decisions that I think made a very wise decision. The New York Giants.
Okay.
They they did not take the Sam Darnold bait. They did not take the Aaron
Hmm.
Rodgers bait. They went for Jameis Winston and signed him
Yeah.
to a very fair 2 years, $8 million contract.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
that to me is a very, very thoughtful approach. Here's the part that I love the most about it, though, Andrew. The Giants know they have to draft a quarterback. They have to. They
Hmm.
they have to at some point in this draft. If it's the first, it's the second, it's the third, whenever it's going to be. I wouldn't, go
Oh
chasing for the
yeah.
need, but you've got to find a quarterback that you think could potentially come in and take the reins of the team moving forward. This is what I
Hmm.
like. They didn't just take a quarterback for this year. They took a quarterback that said, "Hey, would you be willing to be with us for 2 years?"
Hmm.
And that to me is a total bridge mentality. Maybe they're the bridge this year, but they're going to get off the bridge and let another quarterback come in, take the reins to move forward. What about the Seahawks? What are they doing? That contract indicates to me that they think that Sam Darnold's going to take them to the playoffs, and they're not going to look at quarterback this year. That's what it indicates. Maybe they're going to
Yeah.
go the Atlanta Falcons direction, which I think you know how
That's
I feel
funny.
about that type of move. I
Oh
think those are
yeah.
really, really bad moves that tend to
Hmm.
it weakens the trust of the team. It weakens the performance of the team because they're not cohesive. They don't have a vision of where they're going forward with or who they're going forward with. But I give a lot of props to the Giants. You know, there's a lot of pressure to go in the Aaron Rodgers race. I think that if you listen to a lot of Giants networks, there was a echo chamber in some parts that just felt like, sorry, that was my Amazon, I guess, deciding to help me out with that. But anyway,
I get it.
but I give them a lot of props. They
Hmm.
resisted the urge to do something dumb, and that's what they got to do. If they're going to get out of this hole they're in, they got to make um, small incremental decisions that'll get them back to a better spot. So I love the signing. You're not going to go to the playoffs with James Winston unless he does a Sam Darnold esque miracle season, which I'm not saying is not it's not impossible, but
Hmm.
we know that was lightning striking in the perfect spot. It's not happening again. Like that's the way the contract is approached.
Hmm.
Um, and so I just think that that matters. You got to start making good decisions right now. And we have to talk about the 6 hour visit that happened this week, too, right? That's got to be a part of this discussion.
Hmm. And to circle back real quick though, on both of those quarterbacks, on Darnold and Winston. With Darnold, I believe I looked into it and heard that it's basically a 1 year deal. Like they couldn't get out next year. They'll have a little dead cap, but it's only like 50 something guaranteed, even though it's a 3 year, $100 million deal. So next year they could get out of it if they really needed to. So it's like it's not like the Kirk Cousins deal, which was like 2 year fully guaranteed. So I give them a little grace on that. I agree with you. It's not the smartest of moves, thinking that Sam Darnold's going to be leading you to the playoffs and to a Super Bowl, which everyone wants to do. But it isn't like they're tied to his hip for the next 3 years, as that contract might state like sticker price. And on the Giants side, they might not be done yet. This is the Giants. They could have signed Jameis Winston now and said, "Oh, by the way, you're gonna be the backup because we're bringing Russell Wilson in," or something silly like that. Or they might bring Aaron Rodgers. So right now, I agree with you. That's a great move, but it is the Giants. We got to be patient with them sometimes. They
I mean,
might they might go somewhere dumb.
I guess that's fair, but it's just at this point, I'm not buying any of the Aaron Rodgers narratives. Besides one, there's one narrative which we already said we're going to get into.
Hmm.
I agree
Right.
with that narrative. The rest of the other narratives feel like to me an agent that's working
I
triple
agree.
overtime to try to just
Hmm.
somehow make the value there that's not there.
He's trying to pump up the value to the one team that he has a chance to go to. He's saying, "Hey, the Giants and the Vikings really want me. Get me a better contract." Hopefully the Steelers know better.
Uh, well, they don't know better, Andrew, because they're doing the one thing that we both thought was the wrong move.
Hmm.
One other thing I wanted to say too is regarding the Seahawks. I get what you're saying as far as the contracts. Like that's fair. We can acknowledge that. It's not. It's like I said. It's not a one for one. But here's
Hmm.
my thing. Um, if you need to go left and there's an option to go right that could kind of work out well, but it's going to take you farther from going left, is it worth it? Like I guess like I look at the season, right?
Hmm.
If the Seahawks go 8-9, if they go 9-8, and you know it's not anywhere close to being good enough, takes you away
Hmm.
from the top of the draft. You move on from Sam Darnold.
Mediocrity. Hmm.
That's not moving forward. Now, granted, if they told Sam Darnold, "Hey, we're taking a first round quarterback, but we still want you on the team."
Hmm.
If that's the
Maybe they
dialogue,
draft Jackson Dart.
and there's no surprises, but you have your pathway figured out, then sure, I would agree with you. But if this is another Geno Smith type move, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't get you to
Hmm.
your end goal. But I guess it's like, but it comes back to what's your goal? I think that for the Raiders, it made sense because their goal is not to become, you know, prominent playoff contenders. They just want to get people in that stadium. They want to fill those seats. They're trying to
Mhm.
prove to the Vegas market that they can be competitive in it. They're still a new team there. The desire is not as big as in other markets. It's not that they're doing terrible, but are they a household Las Vegas Raiders name? Like, do people
Right.
crave Las Vegas Raiders football? I don't think so. Not based off the
Hmm.
way the record's been, not the way that the stadium's been filled with other fans. So they've got a different boat that they got to drive. You got a
Yeah,
Seattle
they're trying to
Seahawks
build a
space.
culture.
Yeah, but the Seahawks bases, they've been there. They've been
They're
consistently
very faithful.
faithful.
Yeah. Hmm.
That's not the problem. You don't need to figure that out. That's not, you need to figure out a way to be able to build a true football team. So I guess that's where I'm just coming from with that perspective.
Yeah.
All of
And
that's
I would say
fair.
that the division's kind of open too, because the Niners, that's not their division anymore. The Rams are
Yes.
good,
Yeah.
but their quarterback is 1 or 2 years away from retiring, and they don't have a option behind him yet. So their window, the Rams window, is like this year, and that's probably it. So that division is open. It's open for business, and the Seahawks are making some very odd moves. I mean, I was okay with the Sam Darnold move because I it's to me it was Geno Smith wanted too much money, so let's just get a quarterback in here that's basically the same. They've been competitive. We can pay him a little less than Geno was going to cost. But then when they went and signed Cooper Kupp, I thought, oh, you're just getting name value. You're getting another slot receiver. You already have JSN, who's awesome. I really like JSN. You trade DK Metcalf, okay. I didn't agree with it, but I wasn't against it. You got a second round pick. Awesome, great. See what they do with it. But then they just went and signed Cooper Kupp. That did make sense to me. Sam Darnold, it was so-so. But then they go and do that, and their offensive line hasn't been addressed. Their defense got worse. Now they have no targets for Darnold, really. They have an old guy and a other slot guy. So yeah. Yeah, they're making very strange moves, which I don't see how people are predicting that team's gonna make the playoffs. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Another thing too is that, with the Sam Darnold move, if they had brought Sam Darnold in as a way to keep DK Metcalf, different story. It's a different
Yeah.
story. It's a different feel because
Hmm.
you are trying to reinvigorate the team and make it, sold of like, we are still here. We are still competitive.
Hmm.
We can still win games. But that's not what happened. Like it
Yeah.
just, so like I said, I know that it sounds like I'm not any Seahawks fan listening to this. Please know I
Hmm.
don't hate the
Hmm.
Seahawks. That is not what I'm
Yes.
saying.
I've always been a semi Seahawks fan myself. I've enjoyed them.
Yeah, yeah, I just think that they're a good team. Like I have nothing against
Hmm.
them, but it's just the front office thinking right now.
Yeah. And
The math is not mathing.
it's not. And this draft doesn't really have like top tier wide receiver talent. There's a few guys that are good,
Hmm.
but it's not like you're replacing a DK Metcalf in this draft.
No,
I
no,
It doesn't make much sense.
yeah. Or like why didn't they? I know that people are so obsessed with the current draft, but if all you're going to get is a second round pick this draft, why not try to get a few first round pick next
In
draft?
next year, yes, I completely agree. I would try to get a first round pick next year because, again, this draft doesn't really have all that great of receivers. I don't know what next year looks like right now, but I got to imagine it's better than this year's. This year's it's running back, it's D
Mhm.
tackle. Next year might be quarterback and wide receiver again, and maybe the Seahawks could have got a first round pick and could have had two first round picks to try to get a quarterback of the future.
Well, but I mean, there's other factors too. Do you really think that the Steelers are going to have a great season next year? I'm
Yeah,
iffy. I'm
yeah.
really,
They
really iffy.
they could be 500 or less. You could get like a 13th overall pick if you got that first round pick next year.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I think that the NFL notoriously undervalues future picks.
Hmm.
That is where the value
They
is.
want their stuff here and now.
I just think it's a mistake because
I
I
agree.
go back. Let's go back a few years ago. This is an Eagles perspective, but I think it's applicable.
Mm.
When the Eagles traded Carson Wentz, they wanted that first round
Hmm.
pick. They knew they weren't going to get it. So what did they do? They finally came to an agreement with the Colts to say, fine, we'll take a third this year, but you're going to give us a conditional second that could become a first next year if the
Hmm.
conditions are met. and they met them. But what if they had held to that value of that draft? They probably would have gotten a third and a fifth or fourth, maybe a second. I don't even think that would have happened. I probably would have been a third and a third, maybe. That's probably would have
or
ended up
just a
being,
second.
and that just wouldn't have been worth
Hmm.
it. The Hassan
Yep.
Reddick trade. Howie Roseman figured out that he wasn't going to get the value he wanted, so he decided I'm going to punt to 2 years from now, but I'm still going to get this third round pick because that is
Hmm.
I'm adamant that that is his value. And in the end, not only did we get that third round pick, but Hassan Reddick didn't even meet the contract because
Could even play.
I mean, he was just too busy
Totally different
playing,
story.
too
Hmm.
busy off in adventures in Japan. That's the way I'll leave that. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I just think it was short sighted mistakes. But now
Yeah.
I think we're ready now to dig into the Steelers, Andrew. I think we've laid
Yes.
the groundwork.
Yes. A lot of groundwork, but that pavement is there. Now we can build the columns and talk about this Steelers franchise who has a lot of talent. They got a good receiver now and a good secondary receiver in Pickens, but we're talking to Aaron Rodgers.
Dude, I don't know what they're doing. I you sent that gift to me about a hot mess inside of a dumpster fire in a train wreck. And
Hmm.
literally, since then, all I can picture in my mind, Andrew, is that a hot mess was thrown into a trash can that lit on fire. So they put the trash can or dumpster on a train. It's on its way to
Hmm.
Pittsburgh. It is a chemical waste waiting to just crash and literally end up in one of the biggest fires ever in NFL history. That's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for an Antonio Brown moment later this
Hmm.
season to just completely blow up. Mike Tomlin wonders why they ever brought him into the building, and it's the end of the franchise. I just that's what it feels
I
like.
have a prediction. You might
Oh,
kind
I
of like
like
this
this.
prediction. You might kind of
Uh,
like this prediction. I might have mentioned that, and I might have mentioned this to you, but so I think in the end, as what's probably going to happen, everyone probably expects that Aaron Rodgers is going to sign there. They're going to make that mistake and sign Aaron Rodgers to like a 1 year, 25, $20 million contract, whatever it's going to be. Stupid money that he doesn't need. And then they're going to kind of sort of go the Falcons way, but the whole time they already knew it was going to happen. With their 20th or 21st pick, they're going to draft Jackson Dart. And then
mm,
halfway through the season, Jackson Dart is going to take his place and Rodgers is just going to get cut or retire. That's my prediction. And they're going to probably just barely miss the playoffs because Aaron Rodgers is probably get a couple wins at most, and Jackson Dart's going to be a rookie learning everything. He'll probably get a few wins with a really good team. But when they see that Jackson Dart has some talent and there's some potential, I think that Tomlin would probably get to have one more year to see if he can do something next year. So that's my prediction. I don't think they're going to make the huge mistake of having Aaron Rodgers the whole year. I think they're going to have a backup plan. I think they'll say, let's see what he can do, but just in case he is this hot mess inside a dumpster fire on a train wreck like we all know he is, let's draft Jackson Dart with our 20th, 21st, whatever pick they have. That way we have a backup plan, some insurance. Because right now all they have is Mason Rudolph. And if I had to choose between Aaron Rodgers and Mason Rudolph, I don't ever want to think about that lifestyle, but I might have to go with Aaron Rodgers because Mason Rudolph is not a starting quarterback in this league. He's proven that. But that decision's awful. I don't want anything to do with either one of those. But that right now in this moment is all they have is Mason Rudolph or sign Aaron Rodgers, unless they want the Russell Wilson experience again, which they saw that. They saw that
yeah,
show. It was average at best. So honestly, what can they do other than take a gamble with Rodgers and then get some backup insurance with a quarterback in this draft?
I don't know, man. I just to me, I feel like at this point in his career, Aaron Rodgers reminds me a lot of Terrell Owens from the Eagles and Cowboys days.
I love that comparison. I love that comparison. Still talent there,
I,
but it's head case.
I just, but it's like, why would you do that? Why would
Hmm.
you? No upside would be the downside. Like it
Hmm.
just doesn't make sense to me. You've already seen. the best case, like the best, things that have worked out with Rodgers with the Jets was he got injured before he even really did anything in his first season. I'm not blaming him for that. It was a freak injury. And then the
Hmm.
second year, he looked like he looked like what he said he was going to do. He looked like he had more MVPs to chase, but not wins. I mean, when he went
Mm.
on and had that
Yeah.
interview talking to Pat McAfee about, I feel like I have more MVPs in me. I am not trying to sound unfair to him, but when you make a comment like that as a quarterback, that's concerning. I've never heard Jalen Hurts
Hmm.
one time talk about MVPs. I've never heard him talk one time
Yep.
about how he should have beat Patrick Mahomes for the MVP. It's never been his focus. It's never been his
Hmm.
MO.
I've always
And
loved his leadership.
it,
Always.
but
Yep.
that's what it's the focus has got to be. Patrick Mahomes
Hmm.
has never focused on the MVPs. It's always been
Hmm.
about getting the W's,
Super
get the
Bowls.
number one
Hmm.
seed, get to the Super Bowl. And that doesn't seem to be the focus for Aaron Rodgers. If you're
Yep.
Mike Tomlin, your goal cannot be to help Aaron Rodgers to get an MVP season. It's to get your team back to the playoffs and actually win one dang
A
playoff
playoff
game.
game like you haven't done in probably 10 years.
And some of it's his fault, some of it's not. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I think that the Steelers have a bigger issue. They chose the wrong offensive coordinator last year, and they
I
did
would
not
agree with
change.
that. I would
What are
agree
you
with that.
doing?
I don't know why they went with that guy who
Um,
who didn't use
man,
Bijan Robinson and yeah, nope.
I'm trying to think of his name, and I can't remember it off the
Arthur
top of
Smith.
my head. Smith, that's right.
Arthur Smith. Yep. Oh, I
But
remember him very vividly because I was high on fantasy for a couple of guys on that Falcons roster. And once I saw the way he used them, I was thinking, oh, I hate this. Why are you doing this to fantasy superstars? And then the
mm,
Steelers went and picked him up as their OC. I was like, well, I know how this is going to go. Najee Harris and Jalen Warren are going to split touches down the middle. And what happened? They basically split touches down the middle, making both of them kind of fantasy irrelevant. And their offense was just average, kind of like it was the year
well,
before.
and like to build on that, right? And again, this is not me saying everything goes back to the Eagles, but there are some connections that do make sense. The Jaguars just fired Doug Peterson,
Hmm.
who was desperate for a chance to just continue to stay in the NFL, I'm sure, and would
Hmm.
probably love to play for, or not play, but coach for an organization that's well rounded and thoughtful. Why not call him up? Why not say,
That's totally fair. I like that thought.
dude, I'm
He's still got
desperate.
some offensive brains up there. He can help out.
Well, I mean, he can't be worse than Arthur Smith. I mean,
That's for
at
sure.
at the very least, he can't be worse than him. And if you're Mike
Hmm.
Tomlin, you're not looking to bring in someone that would be a threat to you. Not just because you'd be worried about your job, but
Hmm.
because the dynamics, right? You're not looking to bring in someone to stir up the pot and that's not going to be Doug Peterson.
Hmm.
He just lost his job, second time losing his job, right? Like we need to throw that out there. He has been fired two times now. The experiment has failed two
Yep.
times. This is not a
Yep.
proven commodity at this point. The Super Bowl is long in the rearview mirror for everybody. Why
Hmm.
would you not call him? Why would you double down on Arthur Smith and not go for someone like Doug Peterson? It doesn't have to be Doug Peterson. I'm just saying it seems to be like a no brainer. He's come in, he's helped two young quarterbacks be successful. Um, and I'm not saying things that have happened with Lawrence have been perfect, but I think the injuries are a bigger factor than people want to
I
admit.
kind of agree with that. People keep saying that he's a bust or he hasn't panned out, and I'm thinking there's more to the story than all of that. Like you said, he's dealt with a lot of not season injuries, but nagging injuries like high ankle sprains. Those don't just go away during the season. Those linger. You can play, but you won't be the same. He's dealt with a lot of little things like that. And that team's been on a roller coaster ride. Their offensive line's been meh. They've had some receivers, but not like anything great other than Ryan Thomas Jr. He's the real deal. So yeah, I agree with that. I think Lawrence is getting kind of a little bit of an unfair rap because of everything going on.
And I don't know. To me, I just think if Mike Tomlin doesn't go into this year thinking it's his last, he's wrong. I
Yeah.
don't care. This is a personal example. but I used to work for a business, and we helped out with COVID-19 things. It was great. It was a great cause, and I loved it.
Mm,
But once COVID started to come to wind down, which was great. I'm really happy about
hmm.
that. Right? No one wants to go back to the 2020 experiment.
No, no.
Um, but we shifted into another venture, and I remember talking to one of my bosses, and she was like, "Listen, we have
Hmm.
a long runway," and I wasn't mean, but I just made a comment back that like our runway is as long as the investors believe that there's a green path.
Mm,
And that's the way you should look at it in any job you have. Your
hmm.
runway for success is as long as they believe that there's a path to a green tomorrow. And as soon as they think that that path is gone, you're gone. And that's the way you
Yep.
have to look at it. You can't like I just think that Mike Tomlin might be thinking in his head right now, I have won a Super Bowl for this franchise. I've never had a losing season. I continue to get my team to the playoffs. I deserve to be here. And I don't know what he's thinking, but I just feel like
Yeah.
that's the mindset we're coming into with this season, and I feel like it's gonna end badly. That's what I worry about. I want him to succeed. I think he's a great guy. I want him to have another
I've
season.
always been a fan of him. Ever since he was with Minnesota as their D-backs coach, I believe.
Yeah.
What, long time ago. But he was great. And when we lost him, I knew he was gonna do great things. Um, yeah, I've always been a fan of his, but sometimes it's just time. And this might be the last year. Unless what my prediction comes to fruition, because if you have a rookie quarterback, you usually get at least a 2-year window with that kid. So if they draft one, let him play half the season, ownership might say, let's give you one more shot, see if you can do anything with this kid, and then maybe we'll talk about firing you. So we'll see.
How do you look over though? Like I'm not trying to hyper focus on it, but how do you look over? Because you think about it, right? They've lost in the playoffs the past few years, but let's think about it in bigger terms. They lost to the Ravens and got trounced in the playoffs last
Hmm.
year. But then just a few years ago, you lost to Baker Mayfield and the Browns. So in recent memory, you've got two major losses against not just AFC opponents, but your divisional opponents,
Fair.
losing games in not great fashion. I feel like what we could go into, Andrew, is they go into that mindset that you're talking about, but it goes so bad that they cut cords.
It's possible. Yeah,
And I just,
it's possible.
yeah,
And when's the last time they had a quarterback? Ben Roethlisberger? That's
yeah,
been a
I would
minute.
say Ben Roethlisberger.
It's
Yeah,
been a
because I mean,
minute. So
Kenny Pickett had a decent first year.
it was
It was
okay.
like,
Yeah. He
but
showed
that's
some
kind of Kenny
signs of
Pickett.
something.
Yeah, I just feel like
Hmm.
that's his. But they overdrafted. They went way too high on Pickett, but they were
Absolutely.
desperate.
Hmm.
But that's their fault. They had a chance in the free agency period,
Yeah.
and they chose to say, we're gonna go with the Kenny Pickett experiment.
Hmm.
And I mean, I remember when they drafted him that it was kind of like the Jalen Rager-esque moment of like, this guy did not have to be drafted right here, but I guess they felt like they
You could
had
have
to.
got him 2 rounds later.
Um, yeah, I just got to be smarter than that. So we'll see. We'll
Yeah.
see how the Steelers experiment works out, Andrew.
Yep.
I'm
It's
not
gonna be
feeling good though.
interesting.
If Rodgers goes there,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
typically players when they go to a team, you give them credit for wins. We should certainly say they lose wins because of that transaction if it happens. That's what would happen in my mind. I would take away wins from the team.
Normally I would say that, but right now with their quarterback option being Mason Rudolph, I don't know if I would remove wins from what I would say they win right now. I'd probably just call it even. Like right now, I'd probably give them 5 wins.
I, I
Rogers
would
goes
I would take
there.
I would take
I'd
Rudolph
say
in the
probably
field,
5 wins
Andrew.
still.
I would take Rudolph in the field over Aaron Rodgers.
Okay. That's
I know
fair.
that's
That's
strong,
fair. That's
but
fair.
yeah, no, I just
I
that's the way I'm
I
feeling right
I
now.
hear what you're saying. I just probably would lean slightly to Rogers over Rudolph because Rudolph has never done it.
I mean, I
Never.
just to clarify, I'm saying Rudolph in the field, like
Yeah.
whoever else, like
Yeah,
anybody
yeah.
else,
Hmm.
like the janitor. It could be a Division II quarterback.
Mike Tomlin, go out there, throw some passes.
Well, they don't have Jerry Jones on their team, so they're okay. They won't have any arrogant moments of people from the front office stepping in and acting like they know what they're doing. So at least they don't have
That's
that problem
fair.
going for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, shall we move on? I think we've talked about Aaron Rodgers
Yeah,
enough this episode.
I think I've kicked the dead horse enough, but I just had to get a few more kicks in, Andrew.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. You gotta have fun with it. I do know that you'd had another topic you want to touch on, a certain
Yes,
tight end that has signed.
yes. So actually twofold because this is
Yes.
there's another move that I like this week. But let's get to one because I just want to prove to people that I pay attention to news besides Eagles related news. But Andrew, I am all about value when you go
Hmm.
into free agency. It's what kind of
Yes.
value can you get for the price, the contract deal. But the Los Angeles Chargers picked up a tight end this week
Mhm.
that is a underdog type hero in fantasy football, Tyler
He
Conklin.
is. He is.
Um,
And is going to a team with not a lot of target competition.
well, I mean, Tyler's been a really great target, and in fact, this is kind of
He
interesting.
has.
But uh, when Zach Wilson was the quarterback, Tyler Conklin was one of his favorite targets. So I was
Yep.
looking at this.
Hmm.
He had, if we're looking back 2 years, he had 60 targets, actually 61, 621 yards, an average of 10 yards per catch.
Hmm.
And he didn't have any touchdowns that year. But I remember that many of his catches would go right near the end zone. It was always
Hmm.
setting him up, moving the chains, getting the first downs and the third down type
Hmm.
plays. And then last year he had 4 touchdowns. And then back in 2022, he had 3 touchdowns. I mean, this is a guy. I mean, you've also seen him with the Vikings.
Yep, exactly.
Uh,
I know.
so you've got
He
to
is a feisty tight end. He is strong. He's not the fastest guy in the world, of course,
no,
but
no.
he just is a fighter. You get him the ball, he will fight for 3 more extra yards. I've loved his game. I was sad when we lost him. But he got a good contract from the Jets, so I was happy for him. But yeah, I've always been a fan of Conklin.
I'm kind of thinking about it, and I'm not saying he's the same, but it just came in my mind the image of like a Heath Miller for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Fair. Totally
Like
fair. Yeah.
not a.
Does
I'm
the
not
dirty
trying to say
work.
he's hit. Not. I'm not saying he's as good as Heath
Hmm.
Miller. I think Heath Miller is legitimately one of the best tight ends in Steelers
Hmm.
history, but just that same type of.
Yeah.
He's not like wowing you. He's not a Dallas Goddard or Travis Kelsey or. But he can do the dirty work of blocking, but also at the
Hmm.
same time pick up those
Yep.
big passing plays. Um,
Absolutely. And
it,
Justin Herbert's going to love him because all he has right now is a really good slot receiver, Lad McConkey. And they re-signed Mike Williams. We'll see how long he's healthy. Probably a couple games. But yeah, I think Conklin's going to get a lot of targets. I really like it. They do need one more guy. They need another like outside X
mhm.
receiver, alpha guy, like a just a big guy that can beat the team, the defense downfield, open up things. But yeah, great signing. I was actually before free agency started, I was thinking, ooh, whenever Evan Ingram got cut, I thought, oh, if Evan Ingram can go to the Chargers, there could be something going there. They could really challenge the Chiefs, but they didn't get him. He went to the Broncos. The Broncos now could really challenge the Chiefs. So yeah, Conklin's a great tight end. I love that move.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has the potential to work out really well for him. But
Hmm.
for me, it all comes back to value. It all comes back
Yeah.
to how much did you pay for him, and um, did did anyone else lose out on Conklin at the same time? And I think overall, like it's a great fit for them. I really feel like
Hmm.
that Jim Harbaugh will be able to know how to use him. The other thing too, I just was looking up real quick was um, it's a $3 million contract that can grow up to $4.5 million in incentives. So this is a guy that they're expecting to have a role to be a
Hmm.
part of it. The other part too, I forgot to mention is they still have Will Disley, and I think that
Oh,
was their receiving tight end last year. And
he
so
was. Yeah.
um, I guess the reason why I love that is I love moves like that because he now becomes the number two tight end, which makes your team better. You didn't just
They're
get
probably
better at tight
going.
end one, you now got better
Hmm.
at tight end two. And like whenever there's moves like that happen, I think people fail to appreciate how important that is because now when you go into
Hmm.
those jumbo type formations and you're going
Which they're
or
gonna
11
do it a lot.
personnel,
Yep.
that's going to make a huge difference, and it's going to make it a lot
Hmm.
easier for you to be successful at
Yep.
exploiting the defensive formations that you're facing.
Yep. I see what they're doing with adding Becton to the lineup, getting bigger on the O line, adding Najee Harris, who's more of a kind of like a power back than J.K.
Hmm.
Dobbins was. Now adding Conklin, they're going heavy. They're going to be going 12 personnel a lot. They're going to be running the ball probably maybe even more than last year, which they ran out a ton. But yeah, that's their MO. Heavy, smack you in the mouth. You can't stop our run game. Try, which is I completely understand it. I like that I like that motto, but when you have a 50+ million dollar quarterback who isn't a mobile quarterback, not like a Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts who
Hmm.
can add to the run game. He's more of a pocket passer. He's athletic, don't get me wrong. He can escape, but he's a pocket passer with a cannon for an arm. It's a little odd-ish that they're going to that philosophy whenever Justin Herbert has proven he can throw for 40 or 50 touchdowns in this league. He hasn't proven in playoffs. That's a big thing he hasn't done yet. But regular season, he's proven he can be a top five quarterback. But they're going along the lines of running the ball, running the ball. Let's play that Michigan Wolverine Jim Harbaugh offense. Which leads me to some very, very, as called, reckless speculation. I'm going to premise with I don't see this happening. But it's interesting, this talker, because last year, before the draft, or even during the draft, the phone calls were made. And now it kind of makes sense a little bit if you think about the connection. Again, I don't see it happening and I don't want it to happen. But there's been some behind the scenes kind of talking about a JJ McCarthy, Justin Herbert trade. If you think about why that makes sense, it kind of does. McCarthy would go back to Jim Harbaugh, where McCarthy played in that offense where he handed the ball off most of the time instead of flinging it around in an air raid type offense, which the Vikings have. And the Vikings have a ton of cap space still open where they'd be able to absorb that Herbert contract. And Herbert is the fling the ball around all game long. And that's kind of what the Vikings want to do. And he's a proven commodity that they know what they can get out of him as opposed to JJ McCarthy. They're not super sure yet. So it makes sense. Um, I don't see it happening. I don't want it to happen, but there's been some rumors and some steam that that was possibility. And again, last year, Minnesota called the Chargers and said, "Hey, is he available? We'll give you our number 11 pick or something like that and some change." And they said no at the time. But now that we got the JJ McCarthy boy that Jim Harbaugh loves, people are bringing that up again. It's just possible. So just some speculation out there. Just some stuff I've been hearing. And it's interesting. Don't think it's going to happen. I don't want it to happen, but it's interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. I feel like that to some degree, the reason why um, the NFL tends to be an overcorrection league. And what I mean by that
Hmm.
is when someone realized Chip Kelly, I think is a perfect example of this, comes in and brings in the no huddle offense in an extreme way that no one had ever embraced prior
Hmm.
to, I think it was 2013 was his first season as the coach of the Eagles. Well,
Hmm.
that next year, 2014, the no huddle offenses start to come in and really take shape. Defenses have a better read for how to clamp down the no huddle offenses.
Hmm.
It was a very fast turnaround. And I think we could see a similar thing happening where the league is realizing that defenses are getting too light. They are
Yeah,
too
yeah, they're getting small, getting speed
fast.
instead of strength.
And I think that maybe this is what Jim Harbaugh is realizing is that watching teams like the Eagles and the Ravens and seeing that they can exploit with a heavy run game on lighter
Hmm.
defenders to be able to tear up and run on all over the field, to be able to dominate. And I feel like
Yeah.
that's what Jim Harbaugh is seeing is that, well, because you look at the Chargers game, right, against the Texans, and I would argue that their passing game was a problem, but their running game was a problem too. Um,
Yeah.
it would have been, I mean, you should think about it from a standpoint of when Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts run play action plays, the play action dagger play in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs with Saquon Barkley. when the Eagles ran that play action play
Hmm.
and threw it up top to Devontae Smith, the defense had to respect the Saquon
They
Barkley run.
did. Hmm.
They had to. Like it's not a it's not like J.K. Dobbins isn't a good running back, but that
Hmm.
fear element of, oh my gosh, are we about to give up a 60-yard run, is not the same thing with J.K. Dobbins. That is not the type of
Hmm.
running back he was for most of the year. Saquon Barkley, I think, had, if I'm remembering right, six touchdowns of 60 yards over the season, which
It
is
was something crazy,
incredible.
yeah.
Yeah,
And he had, I think, like top two or three um yards before contact,
yeah,
which that is huge. After contact's a
yes.
big thing too. That's a Derrick Henry thing. He wasn't like top five in that category because that's not really his game. Once he gets hit, he'll gain some yards, but that's Derrick Henry. But yards before contact, I was like, whoa, that's crazy.
I mean, I'm just saying, I feel like that we could be seeing something here with the Chargers. I think that maybe
Hmm.
Jim Harbaugh is realizing, maybe I'm trying to,
And he's
it's
won that
kind of,
way. He won that way in
yeah.
Michigan. Big guys, power football, run the ball constantly, have a quarterback that can make every throw, but doesn't have to. So,
Well, it's just, it's good to open up your offense. It's good to
hmm
be multi-dimensional. And we've talked about it with Ashton Genty, but um, he could be someone for teams that can make a huge difference in what the capabilities they have moving forward.
he's been mocked to
Um,
the Raiders a lot recently, which I love because I
yeah,
don't want him to go to
it's a
10.
great move.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a really smart move if you're like. But
Hmm.
again, it comes back to what's the focus, and if your focus is on being relevant and getting fans in the seats and happy and
He's a guy
excited
that'll do
about the
that.
team, it's
Hmm.
absolutely the guy that'll do it. It just depends on what your goal is. The Raiders' goal is to get to a Super Bowl. Probably not the move to make. If your move is to like build a fan
Hmm.
base, great move to make. I think if you're the Chargers, if you're looking to get the Super Bowl and Genty somehow falls to you, make the move.
Oh, oh yeah. If he falls down in the 20s, oh yeah, you can't pass that up at all. I don't
Yeah,
see him getting past the Broncos at, I think they are pick 20. But yeah, if he falls anywhere near there, people need to be trading up to pick him up. If he's outside top 15, there need to be some calls from like five or six different teams. Minnesota, one of them. I know we have Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones now, but if he's close enough where it doesn't cost too much to pick him up, you gotta go get him. He is a
yeah,
difference maker.
yeah. By the way, Andrew, I gotta say, I feel bad. We forgot to mention one key player that the Chargers signed or re-signed this offseason.
And who was
Jalen
that?
Rager.
Hmm.
It was not a mistake.
Hmm.
They actually re-signed him. That was probably one of the
They
best
did.
things I saw on social media was the jokes about, did they intentionally mean to re-sign this guy? Um, but good for him. Good for him to be able to
Yeah.
make a career after what a, tumultuous roller coaster. It's not his fault that he was drafted too high. It's not his fault. Um,
Yep.
that's all on my team. We made some terrible mistakes that season, but I am happy to see that he's somehow found a way into continuing to play as a veteran, and
Hmm.
so good for him.
Yeah. Yep. For sure.
Um, can I get to the other move that I really liked real quick?
100%. What you got?
So I really thought the Eagles were done. I thought they were done
Mm.
and they weren't going to make any more moves. But then I found out on Monday that they signed Aziz Ojolari from the Giants.
Hmm. Hmm.
And man, this is a major upside move where just not a lot of downside, only costed $4 million to be able to bring into the building to
Hmm.
compete in the defensive line room. I just love it. In my mind, I think that the ways things worked out was kind of twofold. One was they sold him on this idea that come play for a team that just won the Super Bowl, we'll get primetime
Hmm.
matchups, you'll get plenty of opportunities to show off your talent. But the other part is that um, I think that they sold the revenge factor. Let's take
Hmm.
some revenge on.
Just like Saquon. Just like Saquon.
I mean, it's worked out well. James
Yep.
Bradbury coming from the Giants, Saquon Barkley, and now you got Ojolari coming in. Um,
Hmm.
Revenge is a very enticing incentive to give to people.
Hmm.
And so I think it's a great way. I also love it because I feel like in my mind, if Aziz is having a good enough season to start out, let's say he has 3 sacks in the first 5 games, I think Howie will
Hmm.
re-sign him. I think he'll work out a contract extension
Yep.
and
Yep. Get it
re-sign
done
him.
early.
But this is
Probably.
the part.
Yeah.
This is the part that I love the most about it. They got him in at 4 million so that we would make sure it didn't count against one of our higher comp picks. It's only goes against our. I think it's a sixth round pick that we got at that level. But then
Hmm.
if you re-sign him, that re-signed contract doesn't count towards the comp picks.
Hmm.
You could still get that new contract. It doesn't affect the comp pick formula for you. You get a chance to see how he's going to play. It's going to be interesting. But I really loved some insight that an Eagles reporter brought up with the fact that um, when a player is deciding on a 1 year deal, why wouldn't they want to play for a team that's in more prime time slots? And it makes
Yeah.
sense.
It does. It
It really
does
does.
because
It
you
makes
get more money
sense.
that way. You get more money.
Well, it's kind of amazing how people do this all the time in different professions, but they don't do the research. They do
Mm.
the quick eyeball test. They listen to what people are saying. And, let's talk about Genty, for example. How many people have honestly watched Genty play his games at Boise State? I honestly don't know. I'm
Hmm.
going to guess low. I'm going to guess the number is low. How many people actually, from start to finish, watched
Yep.
every game? Um, and if that's the case, right, and that's happening for you're bringing drafting people to your team, I got to imagine the same thing happens for free agents. You're not
Hmm.
looking at it. You're going off of the wow statistics, right? Like, oh, they got 3 sacks in that game. Well, yeah, but also the right tackle went out in the second half, and the backup
Hmm.
right tackle had a major ankle injury. But you're not getting that context because you're just getting the
Hmm.
highlights.
In the
So
PFF grades.
yes, the one and true only standard that most people love
Yep.
to just tout as if it's the only truth out there. Yes,
Yep.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I don't know what to expect, but I think that it's a good move. It was
Hmm.
definitely a good move by the Eagles and a great move by the Jets with Tyler Conklin.
Yeah. Yeah. You mean the Chargers?
Oh, sorry. Yes. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jet.
Yes. Just looking at a
Got out
picture
of
of
that
Conklin and
crazy
thinking about the
system.
Jets. Yes. He would be mad at me
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
saying that.
I'm no longer a Jet. I got out of that crazy scenario, the
Yeah.
dumpster fire, which
Yes.
now they got a good coach and Aaron Rodgers isn't there. So maybe they'll pick things around in 5 or 10 years.
Yeah. They're going to take a while. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, was there any other cool moves you want to talk about?
I think that was it for me. Oh, well, maybe we'll wait on it, but eventually we're going to have to dig into some of the NFL rule proposals that came up. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
because,
Because, it was official.
wow.
The tush push was requested to be banned. It was official. And then the Lions requested a couple things too. So, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. It's amazing some of the rules that they're trying to push out there that just like, this is utter nonsense. Um, but we definitely could get in that another time, especially once we get closer to the owners meeting. But that's something on my radar too.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. And then we got a lot of draft stuff to dig into. We probably will do that in a couple weeks when it gets a little closer to the actual draft time. But yeah, there's so much more to get into.
yeah, it never ends, man. The NFL,
Never
they have
ends. They know
they've
what they're
got the
doing.
hook, line, and sinker. Um,
Hmm.
yeah.
Now they're taking Christmas too. They're trying to take Christmas away from basketball.
Well, they didn't try, Andrew. They took it.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, where's that point though, right? Where's the point of too much is too much? When do we get there? How many games is it too much? How many games is it's like, okay, no more games. We have
Probably
to we have to
20.
tap out. You think it's
Probably
20
20. Yeah. Because that's just
without
the
the
round
postseason?
number. Yeah. Because that's just a good round number. 20 with 2 bye weeks
Oh man,
and only
poor
one preseason
players.
game.
That would be brutal. That would just be such a
Hmm.
long schedule.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. They'd have to start it like in August. if they still want the Super Bowl to be the first Sunday in February, which I'm assuming they probably do.
If they had 20 games, could you imagine what the minimum salary would be? It'd probably be like
Oh,
$2
10
million
million?
dollars. I, I couldn't even
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah.
Wow. It really is just so much fun to follow, though. There's nothing quite
Hmm.
like it. Um,
And we'll have to
you
do
know,
like a fantasy show sometime too, like a strictly
oh
fantasy
yes,
episode.
yes.
That will be a lot of fun.
Well, and just so everyone knows that about this, Andrew, because I don't know if all our
Hmm.
listeners would appreciate this, but we are both fairly good fantasy football players. We have playoff success. We have both won championships. Like this
Hmm.
isn't
Hmm.
like, a bunch of doofuses getting on a podcast talking about how much they know
Hmm.
about fantasy football, but there's no proof to the pudding. No, no, there's proof.
Oh
There's
yeah.
proof. We
Oh
definitely know
yeah.
how to win in leagues with like 15 or more teams,
Oh
not
yeah.
just two teams
Deepest
or
of
five
rosters.
teams.
Hmm.
So, we know how to dumpster dive. We wait for the waiver wire.
Oh yeah. Puka Nakua
Yeah.
last year. I got him after week one. Actually, no, I got him before week one last year. I remember that
Do you
because I
mean 2 years
had,
ago? Because he came in 2 years ago, right? Was Puka Nakua?
well, I meant like not this past season, but the year before. So in
Oh,
your,
gotcha.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, 2 years ago, yeah. But I remember because I drafted, I believe their other receiver. I forgot who it was, but the other Rams receiver, and I thought, man, I don't like it. Let me just drop him and pick up Puka. And I picked him up before the season started, and I was like, I like that because he had
Was
like
it
15 catches his first game.
was it their did they pick up one of the former Chicago Bears receivers?
The Rams?
Yeah, wasn't that who their number two was when Puka Nakua came
Oh,
in?
I don't remember. I know they might have had Robert Woods back then,
Oh, that's
maybe.
right.
Not sure. Or you're talking about, oh, I know who you're talking about. Oh, can't remember his name though, because he's still kind of around. He's a bigger name where he was with the Bears, and now he's
Allen
kind of
Robinson.
that's it. That's him. Yep.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, it was Allen Robinson. I think that's who they had going into it, but then they eventually switched over to Puka Nakua, which that was a great move for them. That worked out
Yep.
really really well.
Yep. Yep. He
Um,
was just crazy good. He's big, strong. Yeah.
yeah, it's a fun time of the year, and I'll always stand by this, Andrew. I will die on the sword saying this, but no matter what people will tell you when they say don't worry about it, it doesn't represent anything. Listen, if you're not a good fantasy player, you're probably not a good NFL player. That's just, I mean, unless we're talking about defense, unless we're talking about special teams, maybe that's the
Hmm.
case. But um, if your quarterback's not getting fantasy points, probably not a great
Yep.
quarterback. Might be, like
Usually that happens. Yeah.
there's some proof to the pudding. Jameis Winston struggles with interceptions. Hey, guess what? For fantasy value, he kind of struggles because he likes to throw
But
interceptions to other
now
teams.
the other part though is you could be great in fantasy, but your team's not winning much, kind of like the Bengals last year. Joe Burrow crushing it, but team kept losing because they have no defense. And
Yes.
what do? They re-signed all their offensive players and nobody on defense. So what's going to happen? They're going to have a great fantasy team, but probably not a ton of wins because they just running it back the same things last year.
Yeah. No, it's true. Um, Andrew, I just remembered one thing that I wanted to tell you.
Yeah.
Um, this ties back to the Commanders. I gave them a lot of love in the last podcast. I heard something that concerned me last week, and
Uh-oh.
I've done a little research in it, and it's tough. The Commanders signed, traded for, or re-signed 12 players who are 30 plus.
Hmm. Yeah.
That is that's a lot. I did not really appreciate how much that was, but then I started thinking about it. Bobby Taylor, Zach Ertz, um, trying to think. Debo Samuel's coming up close on that mark.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, I just thinking that through. Maybe they're not going to be as good as I thought they were.
Well,
or this is the
if
win
they're
now
30
window.
or over, yeah, if they're 30 or over, then they still have at least this year where they're going to be good. And that could be their thought, win now while Jaden Daniels is still on his rookie deal before we
Yeah.
have to pay him. So, yeah, I can see that. It's not good for their future. They'll have to address that for sure. But having 30-year-olds on your team isn't a killer for your current season. It could be bad for your future. So they might be saying, hey, we got that close. Let's just go all in this year and add with Debo, add with Larry Tunsil, the trade they did. So I see what they're going for, and I do see your concern as well. Um, but if we're just talking about this year, I think they're going to be really good still.
Yeah, I didn't think about it from that standpoint. I'm not sure if that's
Hmm.
right. I just thought about it. I thought, maybe I'm a little too
Hmm.
bold on how good I thought they were doing. Just something I'm thinking about moving forward. Um,
Yeah.
it's interesting, but I do like it as far as, the moves they made. Like, I guess the tough part is I look at each move and I don't hate it. I look at the
Hmm.
Samuel move and it's like good value.
And they
I
redid
didn't,
his deal too.
yeah. Um, Laramie Tunsil, good value. I like it.
Hmm.
Um, I think Jonathan Jones is serviceable as a cornerback.
Right.
Javon Kinlaw, I think, is a good defensive tackle.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like that makes sense to me. Re-signing Bobby Wagner as your linebacker, like that made sense to
Hmm.
me. Um, I thought the Zach Ertz move was honestly one of their best moves this offseason. Getting Zach Ertz to come back as a tight end, I mean,
Hmm. Hmm.
he's a good role player. So anyway, that's just something I'm watching this year. I'm curious. What's the effect going to
Yeah.
be?
Hmm.
Um, I
Yeah.
think the other part too I mentioned is that when you sign a bunch of people over 30, you don't know when the cliff is going to hit, and the cliff could be that
That's
season.
true. And injuries.
So
Injuries are higher risk when they're older too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, that was my last thought of the podcast. That was one thing I've been mulling around in my head this past week. So now I don't know where I'm at on that. They were a firm winner last week, and now I don't know. I still like it. I still think I lean
Hmm.
towards. I think it was smart decision making. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, you have anything else?
That's it for me.
All right. Well, that's all I got too. Next time we'll probably have more news to talk about. If not, then we'll start looking into those rules we mentioned. That'd be fun to look at. But there's so much more to dive into. Thank you guys for joining us this week on the Gridiron Grind with Andrew and Lance. We will see you next time.
See you guys.